with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, he'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Hello folks, welcome back to Dorset for the first time since last year. Last year we went to Shaftesbury and it's the only one I've done so far in Dorset. By the time we've done with this week and 2 weeks time, we'll have 11 episodes out here in this county. A lot to cover. Now, we are in a place which is defined by a stream here. Here is said stream. That is a stream that only appears in the winter. It's known as a Winterborne stream, and all of these villages we'll be covering this week have Winterborne in their name. This one is Winterborne Houghton. Winterborne Houghton, Hughes Estate on the Winter Stream. Welcome back everybody to Dorset. It's been a long time since we were in Shaftesbury. It was last year and so far I haven't been back. Well, that's all about to change. Today we're beginning a run of 10 down here which will see us tackle some small villages and a couple of larger ones. The first 5 all share a common name, Winterborne. There are several villages in this bit of Dorset which have that name, more than just the 5 you'll see this week. Winterborne refers to a stream which only flows in the winter, hence the title Winterborne. All of the villages on that stream are called Winterborne, but they have a suffix. Kicking us off, we've got Winterborne Houghton. Now in this case, Houghton is thought to come from a manorial time, supposedly meaning Hughes Estate. Winterborne Houghton became recognised as an ancient parish in Dorset. Records show it belonged to the hundred of Pinpern and later fell under the Blandford registration district. Its parish status is documented from at least the 16th century, with registers beginning in 1558. During the medieval period, the settlement grew around farming with small fields and pasture shaping daily life. The Winterborne stream influenced where houses and tracks were placed, and the village formed a linear pattern along the valley floor. Although Winterborne Houghton is not individually detailed in the Domesday Book under its modern name, the Winterborne Valley settlements were all recorded as agricultural places with small populations, ploughlands and livestock. Some are bigger than others. This one is tiny. By the 14th and 15th centuries, Winterborne Houghton was a small agricultural settlement. Farming remained the main activity for hundreds of years, and the village layout changed little. Families worked the surrounding fields and used the Winterborne stream as a seasonal water source. Landmarks were few and far between, and they still are. The Church of St Andrew was rebuilt in 1861 and 62 by the architect Thomas Henry Wyatt. It reused materials from an earlier 13th century church and features a flint exterior, a west tower and a 15th century font. A post office and a shop once served the residents here, but that closed in the 1990s. Residents here, by the way, were once nicknamed Houghton Owls, based on a local tale about a villager mistaking owl calls for human voices. The writer Roland Gant suggested that Thomas Hardy may have drawn on that story for a scene in Far From the Madding Crowd. Now, I have no idea if there's any truth in either claim, but it will be fun to walk around this one with our ears open today and see if we can hear some owls. So before we get walking, we'll delve a bit deeper into that legend of the owls. Now supposedly this story stems from the idea that once a resident became lost in the woods near the village. Calling out for help, he believed that the hoots of owls were human voices answering him back. This tale was repeated often enough that people born in Winterborne Houghton became known locally as Houghton Owls, a name that appears in both modern descriptions and older village writings. The story likely grew because the valley and the surrounding woods have long been home to several owl species, whose calls echo strongly around here. It may not have taken off to the level it did had Roland Gant not suggested that Thomas Hardy used the tale. In his book Dorset Villages, Gant proposed that Hardy use the tale as a model for the scene in Far From the Madding Crowd, where Joseph Poorgrass becomes lost in Yalbury Wood. This idea isn't that far-fetched, because Hardy often used Dorset folklore in his novels. Furthermore, he was familiar with the Winterborne Valley region, so although there is no direct written confirmation from Hardy himself, the similarity between the villagers' confusion in the legend and Poorgrass's bewilderment in the novel supports Gant's theory. Owls and owl motifs appear in several places around Winterborne Houghton today. The most notable place is within St Andrew's Church. They also appear around the village, including on benches and signs, keeping the legend alive in everyday life. Right, let's see some of the village now. To start with, we have a little drive into it from Higher Houghton Farm, which essentially defines the western end of Winterborne Houghton. It's a dead end, you see. Higher Houghton Farm is recorded as an early 19th century farmhouse, and it has specific architectural evidence placing its construction in the early 1800s. It was officially recognised as a Grade 2 listed building in 1985. During the 1800s, Higher Houghton Farm formed part of the wider farming settlement known as Higher Houghton, located at the upper end of Winterborne Houghton. The 1881 census lists several households at Houghton Farm, including agricultural labourers and gardeners. There was also a foreman in charge of the house, showing that the farm was a working site within multiple residents involved in rural trades. One entry records William Bolt, aged 49, as Ag Lab Foreman in charge of house. Higher Houghton Farm is notable for its distinctive construction. It has a symmetrical southeast front of 3 bays hung with mathematical tiles. They were designed to imitate brickwork and were used in the 18th and 19th centuries as a cheaper or lighter alternative to full bricks. As we come down into the village and normal, regular, everyday houses start to appear, you might not realise that we're passing the site of the former reading room. It's marked on the old maps you saw at the start, but I found no historical record for it. So to get to that farm that we've just seen, you have to drive along a road that sort of shares its course with the Winterborne stream, and so 2 wheels are kind of in the water if you try and get up to that farm. It's a very weird experience, but yeah, thankfully it's not too bad that I couldn't get through it, so all good, all good. Okay, so here we are then at our start point in the village, which is right in the centre. We have this little building here with a phone box, and behind that there's the old schoolhouse, and that's the first landmark we're going to talk about. Also on the old maps at the start, you may have spotted a school. Now that still stands, although it's not educating any children now. The building, now known as the Old Schoolhouse, was originally constructed during the Victorian period. Property records confirm that the structure is a brick and flint Victorian house, built in the traditional local style. Its proximity to the church was typical of Victorian rural planning, where schools were often placed near the parish church for ease of oversight and shared use. Census records from the period show that the village had enough families to support a small rural school, although that's not the case these days. Now closed, it was refurbished and extended at some point after 2007, and today it's a private house. The old schoolhouse is built in the traditional Dorset vernacular, and its combination of materials is typical of rural Dorset buildings. Flint was widely available, and brick was used to strengthen corners and openings. The use of flint facing is also seen in St Andrew's Church, and that's next. When it comes to the oldest building in Winterborne Houghton, there's no competition. It's this. Originally, Winterborne Houghton had a 13th century church, but the one you see today isn't that. This is a rebuilding. The current St Andrew's Church was built in 1861 and 62 by the architect Thomas Henry Wyatt. Wyatt was well known and worked across not just Dorset, but the wider south of England. It's built mainly of flint with random rubble combined with banded brick and flint and sections of render. The roof is tiled, which is a common feature of Wyatt's rural churches. In all, it's remained structurally sound for more than 160 years, but we should not be surprised by that. The Victorians built stuff to last. The tower here is built in 2 stages and has an embattled top. It includes a pointed 3-light west window with perpendicular tracery, and above it are twin lancet openings. The belfry stage contains square-headed perpendicular windows with returned labels. Now inside, the church contains several notable features. The nave has a hammer beam roof with arch-braced collars, king posts and struts. The chancel has a wagon roof, giving it a different character from the nave. Most fittings, such as the pews and the pulpit, date from the 19th century, matching the period of construction. The windows are almost entirely 19th century and follow the perpendicular Gothic style. Okay, so next mission is to follow the main road through Winterborne Houghton. It's effectively just one street, but there is a footpath around the back of this street which will form our sort of way back to the car, to our start point, in a little while. Effectively, it's all housing from this point onwards, and of course the stream, the Winterborne stream, is also running next to us too. Now, speaking of water features, the next thing to see is a pond. It's just up there. Now, there are a series of water features in Winterborne Houghton. First up, we have the Jubilee Pond. This was created as a Millennium project built by villagers in around the year 2000, and it was something worth doing. That's because the pond would later receive the North Dorset District Council Award for the Best Millennium Project. After its creation, the pond quickly became a recognised feature of the village's landscape. The pond's construction coincided with other local improvements, including the installation of a Millennium bench decorated with an owl motif. Essentially, the pond was not only a practical water feature, but also part of a wider effort to celebrate Winterborne Houghton's local identity. Just up the road, there's a series of larger ponds. Now, these are marked on modern maps as fish ponds or even fish tanks. I doubt very much there's any goldfish in these, but I do expect there's something swimming around, because these belong to Houghton Springs Trout Farm. Now, before these water features came along, Winterborne Houghton was relying on the stream which gives the place its name. It lies, after all, in a chalk valley on the Dorset Downs, a landscape which has been shaped by geology over thousands of years. Chalk downland is known for producing Winterbornes, which are streams that flow only when the groundwater rises high enough to reach the surface. Winterborne streams dry up in the summer because the water table falls below the bed of the channel. The chalk aquifer beneath Dorset holds water during wet months and releases it slowly, creating seasonal streams across the region. Because the stream only flows in the winter, it would have been a key landmark for early farmers who relied on seasonal water sources. The watercourse runs through several Dorset villages, including Winterbornes Stickland, Winterbornes Clenston and Winterbornes Whitechurch. We'll see all of those later this week. So, where does it start? Well, we already know the answer to that. The stream rises in Higher Houghton, flowing through Winterbornes Houghton and continues downstream towards Winterbornes Stickland. Higher Houghton is located at the head of the valley, where groundwater rises to the surface during those wet months. I'm pleased I put my boots on this morning. It's very muddy and wet underfoot. We're now on the footpath that runs around the back of the main street, and this will bring us through a farmyard and it will take us to something called the Jubilee Orchard and the old post office as well. So those are the last two bits and bobs to see here in this one. As well as the Jubilee Pond, the village has another landmark that bears the Jubilee name. This is the Jubilee Orchard, located around the back of the old school. It lies at the point where the footpath we've been using crosses a road, and on the other side of that road, there's the old post office. Long before the village had its own post office, postal services in rural Dorset were organised through nearby towns. In the 19th century, for example, Winterbornes Houghton was served under Blandford. A post office was eventually opened here, in Winterbornes Houghton though. It served the village during the 20th century, and as well as dealing with postal services, it also had a shop. It closed in the 1990s due to falling usage. With fewer customers and reduced demand for postal services, the village post office simply became unsustainable. Okay, so we've reached the little building where the red phone box is, and next to that phone box we have a parish notice board on the wall. Now, it's been a long time since I've been in Dorset, and you guys probably have forgotten what happens when I see one of these things, so I leave a card on the notice board to basically indicate that I've been. So, there we go, that's Winterbornes Houghton in the books. But that's not it as far as Winterbornes go, because all this week we'll be seeing a run of other villages with the Winterbornes name. Winterbornes Houghton leaves a vivid impression for a place so small. The chalk valley has shaped everything here. The seasonal Winterbornes stream, the line of cottages along Water Lane, and the farmland that rises towards Higher Houghton. The landscape sets the rhythm of the place, with winter water, summer dryness, and the gorgeous Dorset Downs giving the parish its structure and its slow pace. The built history sits neatly within that setting. St Andrew's Church stands in the centre with its flint walls and its tiled roof. The pond, created by the villagers and recognised with awards, adds another water feature that blends with the seasonal stream. But what sets this one apart from anywhere is that legend of the owls. And we've had a real hoot here, haven't we?
I walked out past Higher Houghton, dust pulling in like a veil. The chalk hills breathing cold air, the stream just a thread in the dale. I called out into the woodland, hoping someone might hear, but only the owls replied back, turning my worry into fear. Houghton owls calling through the dark, guiding me along by their song so stark. I thought they were voices leading me through, but it's only the owls and the night they knew. St. Andrew's Tower behind me, its flint catching what light remained. The old farm stood in the shadows, its towers weather-stained. I wandered past ponds and orchards, unsure where the path might bend. Each hoof felt like an answer, each call like a friend. Houghton owls calling through the dark, guiding me along by their song so stark. I thought they were voices leading me through, but it's only the owls and the night they knew. Oh, maybe Hardy heard them too, those cries that twist the mind in a valley shaped by water, where the stream is hard to find. I stood there in the stillness, unsure what was real or true, till the woods gave way to the village and the sky showed a hint of blue. I'll run out, calling through the dark, guiding me along by their song so stark. I thought they were voices leading me through, but it's only the owls and the night they knew. Houghton owls calling through the night, keeping lost souls moving till the dawn feels bright. I followed their music, thinking someone knew my name, but it's only the owls, and I love them all the same.
Hello folks, welcome back to Dorset for round number 3 in total now, and the second of the Winterborne villages. Now I'm beginning this one on a playing field, a very large playing field actually. We've got all sorts of things on here. We've got some goal nets here. Behind me there's even a croquet lawn, although I don't think there's many people going to want to be playing croquet in this weather because it's wet and miserable and horrible right now. But I suppose in the summer it's nice. You'll find all this in the parish of Winterborne, Stickland. Winterborne Stickland, steep land on the Winter Stream. Next up in Dorset we come to another village with the name Winterborne. Yesterday we learned about the Winterborne stream, which rises at High Houghton and where it flows. After passing through Winterborne Houghton it gets to this place. This is Winterborne Stickland. Stickland comes from the Old English stickle, which basically means steep. It's probably linked to the steep trackway known as the Chalky Path that rises from this very village. During the Middle Ages, the settlement grew slowly along the same Winterborne stream we met yesterday. Houses, small fields and farm buildings formed a long village street. The Domesday Book tells us Winterborne Stickland was a sizable rural settlement. After the Norman conquest, the manor was tied to the estate of Milton Abbey. The abbey influenced the village for centuries until the dissolution in the 1530s. Clenston Farm, one of the oldest surviving buildings here, may have begun as a grant of land from William I. By the 13th century, the parish church of St Mary was already established. The church became the centre of religious life and families lived in small timber or cob houses. The village itself remained focused on farming. During the 1700s, the village's layout became more recognisable. Many cottages were built with timber frames and thatched roofs, often utilising flint and stone banding, which is a style seen across Dorset today. The parish stayed rural and quiet, but it's not so much now. Let's see why. In the 19th century, Winterborne Stickland saw some modest growth, and so what we have now is still a village, but a much larger one, with a far more communal character than one of those well out in the sticks. The church tower, dating from around 1500, remains a key feature, and restoration work took place on it in 1892. A local brewery operated here until the 1890s, using the clean water of the Winterborne stream. Through it all, the village kept its long street of thatched cottages, and farming continued to dominate life. Some cottages were repaired or rebuilt, but the overall layout stayed the same. The long street of thatched cottages became well known across Dorset, actually. Modern services developed slowly. The village hall, or the Pamela Hambro Hall if you will, became a local meeting place. There are no widely recorded national figures who lived in Winterborne Stickland, but the Skinner family did leave a strong mark on it. Let's go and see how. Let's get started with the sports ground here in Winterborne Stickland, which is to the north of the main village centre. This is one of the newer landmarks in this village, which grew gradually as local facilities expanded. By the late 20th century, the site was formally recognised as a sports area with grass pitches and tennis courts. The ground includes a full-sized football pitch, a cricket pitch and tennis courts, all listed as local authority facilities. A major change in recent years came when the Winterborne Valley Croquet Club moved its base to this sports ground. The club relocated from Kingston Moorwood to Winterborne Stickland Sports and Social Club, where a football pitch was converted into a croquet lawn. The move required significant work, including new seeding and the installation of a rabbit-proof fence after rabbits damaged the early surface. At the time of the move, only social play was allowed due to national guidelines. Today, the sports ground supports several activities beyond croquet, football and cricket. Alongside the sports pitches, the site also includes a playground that serves the younger Sticklanders. The grounds are also used for events organised by the Winterborne Stickland Sports and Social Club. From the sports area, we now have a longish walk to undertake, which will see us travel along a footpath that runs around the back of the main village street. This is so that we can get ourselves to the village hall. Okay, so from the recreation ground, we're going to make our way south. Now, I don't know whether this is a Dorset thing, but most of the villages in the Winterborne Valley are sort of a linear affair. You remember yesterday, Winterborne Houghton went from east to west. This one goes from north to south. So we're going to make our way to the south, down into this street here via this path that leads to the recreation ground, then out onto the main road, the main sort of thoroughfare, down towards the village green. We're not going as far as the green though, because we're going to take a right turn off that main road and head for the village hall. This is the village hall, which is known locally as the Pamela Hambro Memorial Hall. It was formally registered as a charity on the 10th of September 1962, according to official Charity Commission records. It was named in honour of Pamela Hambro, a member of the Hambro family which has long-standing ties to Dorset. It includes a main hall large enough to host sports and classes, and it can be hired at hourly rates that include the use of its kitchen. Arts Reach events are held at this hall, and typically they require seating for audiences of between 60 and 120 people in similar village halls across Dorset. Arts Reach, if you don't know, is a Dorset-based rural arts organisation. Founded in 1990, it brings professional theatre, music, dance, storytelling and workshops to villages across the county. It's one of the longest running rural touring schemes in England and works by partnering with village halls, local volunteers and touring performers. Okay, now to continue along West Street, and this will take us towards the church. At the centre of Winterbornes Stickland is the Church of St Mary. The earliest known list of rectors here begins in 1217, and the present building contains structural elements from that time. The chancel and the nave are the oldest surviving parts. By the late 13th century, St Mary's Church was already tied to wider ecclesiastical networks. In 1291, records show that a payment of 8 marks from the rectory went to the chapter of Countesses in Normandy, and additional sums were paid to Milton Abbey and the rector of Derweston. So we can deduce from that St Mary's was part of a cross-channel clerical structure during the medieval period. The earliest known vicar, Simon Avenel, took office in 1312, and during his ministry the living was held from the chapter of Countesses after the purchase of Milton Abbey in 1336. So what's this church made of? Well, it's a mixture of local materials typical of Dorset. The walls are made of flint and rubble, sometimes banded and sometimes mixed irregularly, with ashlar dressings used for structural strength and decorative detail. The church has several key exterior sections that date from different periods. The tower, built in the late 15th or early 16th century, is of moderate height, has 2 stages and is embattled with pinnacles. Above the porch here is an 18th century sundial with Roman numerals. A tomb chamber, added in the second half of the 18th century, stands on the exterior of the church and forms part of its later architectural development. Inside the tower are 4 bells, 3 of which date from the 17th century. One is inscribed "Serve the Lord IW 1622, whilst another says "Give thanks to God IDRT 1626. There are 2 treble bells, one from 1670, the other from 1905. Now the windows of St Mary's Church span several periods. The east window, described as being of 3 lights, is identified as Early English in style, placing it in the 13th century. The nave contains 18th century windows, added during later alterations to the medieval structure. There are several memorials in here linked to local families. One of the most notable is the large tomb of the Skinner family, located in the side chapel. Thomas Skinner, who died in 1756, is among those commemorated here. A mural tablet inside the church bears a heraldic shield with a crossbow between four choughs, believed to be connected to a former rector named Highmore, whose daughter married a man without a coat of arms, leaving one side of the shield blank. Quick look at the ceiling for you here, people, before we leave the church. And then we'll be out again into the rain, although the rain has slowed down a little bit since I've been in Winterbornes, Stickland, so it may be starting to disappear. So back out we go. We're heading to the village green now. Now, to get to the green, you have to go down the entrance to the church, past the building you can see just beyond the gate over there, and down a little road that links you to it. And basically the rest of the things I want to show you here in this village are all based around the green, with the exception of the Crown Inn. That'll be towards the end. Next we have the school. Now, the site of the old school at Winterbornes, Stickland was formally established as a school in the mid-19th century, gifted in 1859 to the Diocese of Salisbury by Carl Joachim Hambro, a banker and the owner of Milton Abbey. The gift created the legal foundation for a permanent school building in the village, and Winterbornes, Stickland would go on to have a place of education for more than 150 years. That was until 2013, when it finally closed as a primary school. Today, the old school building is at the centre of major efforts to preserve it. After the school closed, the site was used by Stickleberry's preschool, which opened in 2015 and operated until August 2023, when Ofsted suspended its registration due to some concerns for its children. Its closure triggered a legal clause returning the site to the Hambro family, raising fears that the building might be sold or even demolished. In 2024 and 2025, local residents launched a campaign to buy the building and reopen it as a nursery. A report from June last year confirmed that the building had been saved from demolition and would reopen as a nursery, offering full-time childcare for children from 9 months old and upwards. The building is now managed by a community interest company, or CIC for short. As we leave the school behind, it's hard to not notice the massive frontage of the rectory at the next junction. The earliest part of this house was built in 1685 during the late Stuart period. The date, 1685, is carved on a stone panel on the north front. Along with that date stone, you can see the arms of Clavering impaling west, marking the marriage of Rector Robert Clavering to Honor West in 1683. The stone confirms both the age of the building and its early link to the clergy of the parish. Over the next 2 centuries, the rectory underwent several major changes. The first significant extension came in 1768, when a new north wing was added at the east end of the original range, and a date stone marking this work is still present on the building today. Today, the former rectory is no longer used as a clerical residence. Like many historic rectories in rural England, it passed into private ownership after changes in church housing policy during the 20th century. The building is now a private house listed as a Grade 2 property. Methodism arrived in the Winterborne Valley during the early 19th century, and Winterbornes, Stickland soon developed 2 separate Methodist congregations. The earliest recorded Methodist presence in the village appears in the 1851 religious census. As the century progressed, the population of Winterbornes Stickland grew to around 400 people by the late 19th century, and that supported the establishment of those two separate Methodist chapels. The Wesleyan chapel was built in 1863 and the primitive chapel followed in 1877. The two chapels stood close to each other, with the Wesleyan chapel located up Chapel Lane off North Street and the primitive chapel located on North Street itself. This then is the latter, and it held its final service in 1994, ending more than a century of use. Both chapels were modest in size, built to serve small congregations, and constructed using durable local materials that matched the architectural character of the village. Their simple rectangular forms, pitched roofs and brick dressings are typical of rural Methodist chapels elsewhere across Dorset. The Winterbornes Stickland War Memorial is next. This was created after the First World War and was erected in the 1920s as a tribute to those who died in the conflict. Later, after the Second World War, the memorial was altered to include the names of those who died between 1939 and 1945. This memorial stands on North Street in a position where a small thatched outbuilding once stood before the First World War. It's a stone Latin cross standing on a tapered shaft which rises from a two-stage square plinth set on a three-step base. Winterbornes Stickland has one pub, and this is it. The Crown Inn is the oldest surviving public house in the village, dating from the mid-18th century. This makes it older than many of the village's well-known thatched cottages, which were built mainly in the 18th and early 19th centuries. Its position on North Street, close to the centre of the village, suggests that it served travellers using the route through the Winterborne Valley long before modern roads existed. Its thatched roof is one of its most distinctive features. That helps it to remain a well-known feature of Winterbornes Stickland, and it clearly works. Its presence on pub directories confirms that it still functions as a place offering food and drink. It's adapted to modern needs now, while still keeping its historic structure intact. I think we might have set some kind of TVI record this morning for the number of thatched buildings in one village. I can't think of a single village that I've done previously that has more thatched buildings than this. Loads of them, loads of them. Okay, we are virtually done with the walk because all that's left is to head back up the main street and back towards the recreation ground, and that is effectively Winterbornes Stickland. So time to get in the car and move on to the next Winterborne in the series. So that's Winterbornes Stickland. By the time this village appeared in the Domesday Book, it was already a structured rural settlement, and the centuries that followed added the buildings, institutions and features that now define it. From the sports ground, which now hosts croquet, tennis and football, to the Crown Inn with its 18th century origins and its thatched roof, Winterbornes Stickland links the past and the present through pretty much everything that lines or is just off North Street. Winterbornes Stickland's story is not defined by a single landmark, but by the way its structures form a connected landscape. Each part contributes to a sense of place, giving the village a depth that continues to grow with every generation.
This long street since I was small, past thatched roofs leaning by the winter stream, where the chalky path climbs up the hill and the old fields sit just as they've always been. I think of croquet on the sports ground grass and the shouts on match days drifting through the playground, ringing with younger voices, all part of the place I always knew. Winterbornes Stickland, you stay with me still. Every cottage, every track, every chapels once filled with hymns and breath, the schoolyard alive with running feet, the crowning glowing on darker nights, a place where neighbors would always meet. Winterbornes, Stickland, you stay with me still. Every cottage, every track, every turning in the road. I carry your shape in the way I speak, in the way I learn to live and grow. Winterbornes, Stickland, you're part of my life, woven deep in all I do. Winterbornes, Stickland, wherever I go, I'll always find my way back to you.
Hello folks, welcome back to Dorset once again for another Winterborne village. Now behind me here you can see we have a rather large building. That, I believe, is a tithe barn. We haven't seen many of them on the channel up to now, but occasionally they do crop up. Now this one here is probably one of the most notable buildings in this place, and there aren't many buildings all told here, to be honest with you. There's this, there's a manor house, there's an old Sunday school, there's a collection of houses, most of which are in that row over there, and then there's a church which is down there. There's not really much more to this place, but it does have quite a bit of interesting history to it, as you will find out. This is the parish of Winterborne, Clenston. Winterborne Clenston, Clenston's village on the Winter Stream. Round 3 in Dorset this week, and episode 4 overall sees us in the parish of Winterborne Clenston. Once again, we're in a village that lies in the Winterborne Valley, and the name Clenston has an interesting bit of history to it. Clenston comes from the Clenston or Clench family, who held land here in the 13th and early 14th centuries. A 1312 record names Roger de Clenston as the patron of the church, and that's the first official link between the family and the place name. During the Middle Ages, 3 small settlements existed here in the lower Winterborne Valley. They were Winterborne Clenston, Winterborne Phillipston and Winterborne Nicholaston. Over time, Phillipston and Nicholaston declined, especially after the Black Death. Clenston survived. After the Clenston family, the manor here passed to the de Winterborne family. Over the next 8 centuries, it passed through several families by inheritance, including the Herrings, de la Lynns, Milbornes, Mortons, Mitchells, Pladles and Carlisle Clarks. There are some good landmarks in this one. Parts of the present manor house date from the late 15th to early 16th centuries. It was built using Purbeck and Portland stone with flint banding, a style typical of the area. The house includes a staircase turret and mullioned windows. The local church stands on the site of an earlier medieval building. Although the current building dates from 1840, the site itself was used for worship for many centuries. The earlier church served all 3 villages of the lower valley. Now, of course, it's just Winterborne Clenston. From the 16th to the 18th centuries, Winterborne Clenston remained a small farming area. The manor house was often let to tenants because the owning families lived at larger estates nearby, such as Milborne St Andrew and later Watcombe House. A large tithe barn built in the 16th century stands near the manor house today. It has a hammer beam roof and is a listed building. Repairs were made to it in 2008 to prevent further decay, though long-term restoration has been slow. During the 1900s, Winterborne Clenston remained very small. Farming continued, and the historic buildings became the most visible features. So on today's walk, we'll be sure to see the manor house and the church of St Nicholas. Of all the families, it was the Pladle and Morton Pladles in particular who were most influential here. One family member gave his name to the Mansell Pladle Prize for Dorset Historical Writing. We'll throw in a section on that too. There's not much to see here, but there's plenty to talk about. Let's go. Winterborne Clenston is one of the smallest villages in the Winterborne Valley. It doesn't have a lot, but what it does have, it makes the most of. There are two buildings which define the place more than any other. One of them is the Manor House. It dates from the early 16th century, placing its first construction in the Tudor period. It's one of the oldest surviving structures in the area and stands about a quarter of a mile north of the parish church, which is the other building that we're going to be interested in here. Now, the history of the manor house spans several centuries and includes periods of change, repair and partial loss. As regards the latter, part of the building was removed in either the 18th or 19th century, leaving only traces such as the lower part of a doorway discovered during later work. The manor house is built from banded flint and ashlar stone combined with rubble and ashlar dressings. The roof is made of stone slates, which were typical for high-status buildings in the region. The house has 2 and 3 stories in different sections. An oil painting from 1760 kept within the house gives a rough idea of how it looked at that time, although the image is not exact enough to identify every detail. The house remained linked to the manor estate, which passed through several families over many centuries. We know for sure the manor was held by the Clenston family until around 1230, and then by the de Winterborne family. Later families such as the Herrings, de la Lynds, Milbornes, Mortons, Mitchells and Pladels all had their turn, but many of them opted to not live here. Although many of the owners did not live full-time at the manor house, their decisions shaped its upkeep, its tenants and its place within the estate. The long chain of inheritance often passed through daughters when no sons were born. That explains the variety of the surnames. Now, one notable figure connected to the wider estate was Edmund Morton Pladel, who built Whatcombe House in 1710 and whose family held the manor for generations. The Pladel name remains well known in Dorset, partly because of the Mansell-Pladel prize. More on that in a bit. I'm sure you'll have noticed there that we didn't actually see the manor house totally. It's because it's behind all those other buildings. The entrance to the manor house is off the main road, which runs through Winterborne Clenston from north to south, over there. On the other side of that road, that's all parkland that belongs to Whatcombe House, which we'll talk about a bit more in tomorrow's episode. Here in Winterborne Clenston, we're continuing south down this track. We're off to find the church via an old Sunday school. So now we're on our way to the church, but between the two there's something else we can stop to have a look at. The old Sunday school at Winterborne Clenston was built in the late 19th century and stands only a short distance from St Nicholas's Church. The building was created to give local children a place to learn reading, writing and religious lessons on Sundays. It's built from local stone, matching the materials used in the church and many other buildings in the Winterborne Valley. Today, the old Sunday school survives as a small historic structure and part of the group of historic buildings that make up Winterborne Clenston. The building's survival is helped by the fact that Winterborne Clenston is a small settlement with limited modern development. Well, if that is a private dwelling these days, it's a very derelict private dwelling. Certainly, I don't think anyone lives in it because some of the windows at the top didn't have any glass in them. It's always a surefire way to know that something needs a bit of TLC. Okay, so we are approaching the church now. Not that you'd know because this is my view. There is a church here though, the spire of which I can see through those trees. There's like a little path off to the right which links this one to it. Well, it's not often that Footpath Map gets it wrong, but apparently there is no path there. So I'm currently heading back the way I came. Luckily it's not very far. We'll just drive down to the church. It's it's not very far away. Now we're at St Nicholas's Church. This was rebuilt in 1839 and 1840 by the architect Louis Fellamy to replace an older medieval building that had stood on the same site. The rebuilding was funded by Mrs Mitchell of Whitechurch House, who paid for the entire project and invited the Bishop of Salisbury, Edward Denison, to consecrate the new church in September 1840. The new building was designed as an estate church. The present church is built of banded flint and ashlar stone, with ashlar dressings around the windows and doors. Flint was widely available in the chalk valleys of Dorset, and ashlar was used to give strength and clean edges to openings. St Nicholas's consists of a nave, a very short chancel, north and south transepts, and a west tower with an octagonal stone spire. The tower has 2 stages and includes belfry windows with curvilinear tracery. Above the main door is a decorative trophy of arms. Inside, the transepts are boxed, meaning they have enclosed seating areas typical of 19th century estate churches. The altar rails are arcaded with a moulded top rail. J.J. Raven's 1904 survey of Dorset bells states that the church had one small modern bell in the turret of a modern church. Memorials and monuments-wise, some were moved from the earlier medieval church when the new building was constructed, but there are still several wall tablets linked to families connected with the manor, including the Mitchell family, who funded the rebuilding. And once again, the Winterbornes stream is right next to this church. You see here? There's the edge of the cemetery, and the stream is there. It goes underneath the access road that leads to the church. Every single Winterborne village so far has been like that, with the stream right next to the church. It just goes to show, doesn't it, how ancient religious sites were founded near water. Let's see if the same is true of the next one in the series. The next one even has church in its name. So, as we've learned, many families once held this manor, and the Pleydell family are perhaps the best known because of the Mansell Pleydell Prize. Founded in 1904, it was created to encourage research and writing on subjects linked to Dorset's natural history, archaeology, and local studies. It was set up as part of a joint trust that later became known as the Mansell Pleydell and Cecil Trust, which awarded prizes for essays submitted to the Field Club. The history of the Mansell Pleydell Prize begins immediately after its foundation, with the first competitions held in 1906. The prize is named after John Clavel Mansell Pleydell, a Dorset landowner, naturalist and antiquarian. His life and work are described in Roger Piers's centennial biography, which is referenced in the catalogue of prize essays. Mansell Pleydell was a founding member of the Dorset Natural History and Antiquarian Field Club in 1875 and served as its president for many years. He wrote widely on Dorset's geology, botany and archaeology, and he was known for his careful fieldwork and detailed observations. He lived at Whitechurch House and used his position to support scientific study in the county. The trust and the prize itself were created in his memory because he'd left funds specifically to promote the study of Dorset's natural and human history. Early prize-winning essays covered subjects such as the ringed plover, architectural styles in Dorset churches, and the geology of the Purbeck Hills. The catalogue of prize essays held by the Dorset Natural History and Archaeological Society shows that the prize was awarded regularly. It was sometimes awarded jointly with the Cecil Prize, which focused on scientific or technical subjects. The existence of a 1905 Mansell Pladle Prize medal, made by John Pinches of London and later sold at Duke's auctions, confirms that the prize was formally recognised. Even in this brief review, you can see why the smallest villages cannot be ignored. Winterborne Clenston has some seriously important bits to it, even though on the map you might struggle to spot it. At its centre stands the Manor House, a Tudor structure built in the early 1500s and later altered in the 17th century. Its flint and stone walls, stone slate roof and octagonal stair turret give it a distinctive profile, and its Grade 1 listing confirms its national importance. The manor's long chain of owners, from the medieval Clenstons to the Milbornes, Mortons, Mitchells and Pladles, anchors the parish in a documented line of inheritance stretching back to the 13th century. Some of that you don't even get in the biggest towns.
The valley gathers shape in our name. Clenched stone roofs carved deep in chalk and stone. Three small places once shared this stretch of ground, yet only our village kept its strength and stayed. We held the manor first, we set the line. Others followed later. Sickness struck. Still our village stood with barn and hall intact. Hammer beam timbers holding firm through change. Later heirs build what comes grander rooms, yet our manor stayed the anchor of the vale. Through Herrings, Lynns, Milbornes, Mortons too, shape the path they walked. We are the Paynells, keepers of this place, guardians of stone slate roofs and turrets.
Hello folks, welcome back to Dorset for another Winterborne village. Now behind me there you can see a house. That's the old police station in this village. Interesting, didn't even know that was there. My parking space, like literally right next door to it. Now, the police station is certainly not the most important thing in this place by a long shot. The most important thing is the church, the tower of which you can just see above this house here. Why is it important? Because the name of this place is Winterborne Whitechurch. Winterborne Whitechurch, Whitechurch on the Winter Stream. Today we come to Winterborne Whitechurch, which is the biggest village we'll be hitting this week. Still in the Winterborne Valley, the name of this village is pretty easy to deduce. It had a church which was so distinctive. Whitechurch comes from the stone-built church which stood out from the many other churches in the area, which were mainly made of timber. Early documents for this one used forms such as Winterborne Alba Monastery and Winterborne Blank Mustia, both meaning White Monastery. During the medieval period, the village grew along the north-south line of the river we've been following all week. Later, settlement gradually moved towards the main road it has now, especially after that road became a turnpike in 1752. The manor remained tied to Milton Abbey for centuries. During the Tudor period, Sir John Tregonwell rented out the manors of Whitechurch and Whatcombe for the symbolic rent of a single red rose each year. Later, families such as the Squibbs and the Turbervilles would come along. The parish church, dedicated to St Mary today, has medieval origins. It once held a 15th century carved pulpit that originally came from an old church at Middleton. John Wesley, or Westley, served as the vicar from 1658 until he was removed in 1662 for refusing to use the Book of Common Prayer. The village, meanwhile, remained small back then and was dominated by farming families. In the 19th century, the parish saw modest growth. The churchyard gained a war memorial and the village expanded slightly along the main road. And that brings us to today, where we find a village whose layout has changed as settlement moved towards the turnpike. The medieval settlement remains south of the village are still visible though, lining the edges of the Winterborne stream. During the mid-20th century, the parish saw some gradual modernisation. Roads improved and new houses appeared, but the village still kept its long, linear form. Today, important landmarks include St Mary's Church, the medieval settlement earthworks, Coombs Ditch, and the Whatcombe estate. Winterborne Whitechurch has links to several notable people. We already know of one, John Wesley, who was the grandfather of the Methodist movement's John and Charles Wesley. Another was George Turberville, a poet and diplomat during the reign of Elizabeth I. Sidney William Ware, born at Whatcombe in 1892, received the Victoria Cross in 1916 for bravery in Mesopotamia. So there's lots to talk about here, but above all, we're here to enjoy the lovely scenery of the Winterborne Valley. Before we get to the village, let's discuss Whatcombe House, which stands in the north of the boundaries. Its origins lie in the mid-18th century. The house was built in 1750 for Edward Morton Pleydell, who created it as a Georgian shooting lodge and as a second home. The house's foundation period is also linked to a wider story in the area. Pleydell built Whatcombe shortly before water shortages made his main residence at Milbourne House difficult to maintain, making Whatcombe a practical retreat as well as a fashionable one. After its construction, Whatcombe House developed through the late 18th and early 19th centuries. In 1802, the house underwent significant alterations and extensions, expanding its scale and architectural details. The building later became part of a broader historical landscape shaped by disputes between local landowners, including the long conflict between Edmund Morton Pleydell and Joseph Damer, the first Earl of Dorchester. During the 20th century, Whatcombe House was occupied by several institutional groups, including the Christian Barnabas Fellowship, before returning to private residential use. Its long history led to its designation as a Grade II listed building in 1955. Although Whatcombe's grounds are smaller than those of major country estates, the house is positioned within open fields and gentle slopes typical of the region. The parkland has remained largely rural, with no major industrial development. Edward Morton Pleydell, who built the house, came from a long-established Dorset lineage connected to Milbourne St Andrew and Winterborne Clenston. Through marriage, the Mortons had inherited nearby estates in the 16th century, including Clenston Manor, which passed into the family through Warborough de la Linde. Later generations continued to occupy Whatcombe, and it changed hands several times through female inheritance. Whatcombe House is a 3-storey building with a 7-bay symmetrical facade. The central bay features a giant order of coupled Ionic pilasters, giving the house a strong vertical emphasis. The windows include 12-pane sashes on the first 2 floors and 6-pane sashes on the upper storey. The building also includes a Palladian doorway with a lunette bearing a shield of arms and a Palladian window above with Nacanthus capitals. Inside, the entrance hall contains an 18th century Rococo plaster ceiling, while the staircase is made of stone with wrought iron balusters. Whatcombe House is not open to the public. The surrounding area includes a small number of residential properties associated with the estate, and modern property data shows that Whatcombe House contains 3 separate addresses, including 1 flat and 2 other dwellings. Okay, so I'm just making my way from the old police station, which you saw at the top of this video, towards the church. It's about a minute's walk between the two. It's a nice amble as well. You get this lovely thatched cottage as well in between them. That's pretty, isn't it? So let's have a look at the church and see how it gives Winterborne Whitechurch its name. In the village then now, St Mary's Church is our starting point. This stands on a site with very early origins, and medieval records show that a church existed here by the early 13th century, when the present chancel was built. But here's the thing, we know there was a predecessor. Winterborne Whitechurch gets its name from the literal White Church, which stood here in Saxon times, long before the surviving stone structure was razed. During the medieval period, St Mary's developed in several stages. The crossing was rebuilt in the early 14th century, possibly after the collapse of an earlier tower. In the 15th century, the central existing tower was constructed, and a south chapel was added on the site of an earlier transept. A fire destroyed the nave in the 1800s. That disaster was noted in a 1910 account describing that the nave had been burnt down 60 years ago, which would place the event in the mid-19th century, but a more exact date isn't known. The exterior of St Mary's shows the layers of its long building history. The chancel still has its original lancet windows and early buttresses on its east wall, along with a medieval corbel table. The tower has 2 stages and a north vice turret that changes from square to octagonal as it rises. The south chapel, also 15th century, contains perpendicular style windows. The nave, the north aisle, the south aisle and the south porch were all rebuilt or added in 1844 by the architect Benjamin Ferry, giving the church its present Victorian outer form in those areas. St Mary's contains several memorials that link the church to local families, and speaking of which, the parish register includes the baptism entry of the father of John and Charles Wesley, connecting the church to the family of the founders of Methodism. The war memorial at Winterborne Whitechurch can be found in the churchyard. This honours the men of the parish who died in the First World War and the Second World War. It's a cross which measures just over 2.1 metres tall. That makes it modest in scale compared with some larger town monuments, but it's still tall enough to be clearly visible within the churchyard. The proportions also follow the typical arrangement of a stepped base, a plinth for inscriptions, and a tall cross above, a widely used format across Dorset. The memorial carries 10 names from the First World War, all listed alphabetically by surname, with each entry giving the man's forename, initial, surname and regiment. It also carries 4 names from the Second World War, again listed alphabetically and with full identification details. And the building you can see behind the War Memorial there, that's the old schoolroom. Now, Winterborne Whitechurch still has a school. You can find it on Dolway Lane, which is the road which is directly opposite everything you can see behind me there. Also up this road, there's the village hall. Basically, the school is on the left and the village hall is on the right. Let's check them both out. Now we come to the village hall, which was built in 1937. The hall stands on Dolway Lane. From its earliest years, the hall has been used for organised events, and this continues today. It's common to see things like keep fit sessions, dance classes and Zumba meetings in here. It's also used for fundraising purposes run by the hall's committee, which helps maintain the building and supports its running costs. Bingo nights, social evenings, craft sessions, curling and live music all take place here too. It's the central focus of life in Winterborne Whitechurch. A notable modern addition is a milk machine that sells fresh milk and local farm produce, installed as part of efforts to support local suppliers. In 2021, a donation library was opened inside the hall, allowing visitors to borrow or exchange books too. Dunbury Church of England Academy is literally dead opposite the hall. This was formally founded as an academy on the 1st of February 2014, according to its official Department for Education record. The school was created under the Diocese of Salisbury Academy Trust, which remains its sponsor today. Its foundation marked the establishment of a single primary school serving several villages in the Winterborne Valley, at least in its current legal and organisational form, although its roots do go back further through the schools it replaced. The school now operates across 2 bases, one in Winterborne Kingston and one in Winterborne Whitechurch. The Kingston base houses Key Stage 1, whilst the Whitechurch base houses Key Stage 2. Before 2014, the area was served by separate village primary schools, including those in Winterborne Kingston and Winterborne Whitechurch, which were merged into a single academy structure. That merger means now this has a capacity of 210 pupils. However, the school currently has 113 pupils on its roll, so it's operating at just over half its official capacity. I guess that means if there's an influx of new builds, this is ready to cope. It has 4 classes, which aligns with the pupil numbers and the 2-site structure. Just had quite a funny moment there. I was stood taking the shots of the school there, and obviously I can't tell what's behind me most of the time, and behind me at that point there's this street here which we're about to walk through, and it's joined to the street where the school is by this footpath, and I just finished clicking the camera off and I turned around and I've got this dog by my side sniffing my trousers. Startled me. Unbelievable. Anyway, let's carry on through this street and see where it leads us. After walking through a very residential area, we found ourselves on Blandford Hill. About halfway down this hill, on the left-hand side, there used to be a chapel. It was Wesleyan Methodist and it was built in 1847. The foundation of the chapel connected the village to the long Methodist history of the area. Winterborne Whitechurch was, after all, the birthplace of Samuel Wesley, the father of John and Charles Wesley in 1662, and he was baptised in the church. The chapel that stood here served the growing number of Methodist worshippers in the Winterborne Valley and was part of a network of small chapels linked to the Wesleyan circuit. Not that you'd know any of that today by driving past it, because it's been demolished. After its foundation, the chapel remained active for more than a century, but it would eventually close in 1971 because of its poor condition. It was then sold in 1972 and demolished in 1973, ending its physical presence on Blandford Hill. Despite the closure, Methodist worship did not disappear from this village. Services continued in St Mary's Parish Church, showing that the congregation adapted by meeting elsewhere after the chapel's demolition. Today, nothing of the original chapel survives above ground. The site is now occupied by a modern house. It's called Chapel Cottage, and that's literally the only remaining clue as to what once stood here. As Winterborne Whitechurch grew bigger since its early medieval days, it gradually moved away from the stream where it originated. Basically, the heart of the village was becoming more and more centred on this road, a turnpike which slices its way through it. So then, it should be no surprise that the chapel was built where it was, and the same goes for this next thing. This is the reading room, which was built in the late 19th or early 20th century to provide newspapers, books and a warm indoor space for local residents. The reading room is a standalone building on Dorchester Road, recorded as a bus stop location in many sources now. The reading room has had several uses over the past century. In recent years it's been the village shop and even a kitchen showroom. It's now the office of Chichester Land Agents, a rural property and land management firm. Because the reading room has been used for retail and office purposes, it still contains basic facilities suitable for those functions, should it ever need them again. Okay, I'm in the shelter that's opposite the reading room here, and this is where I'm going to leave a card. Now, generally speaking, if it's raining, I don't leave cards because the water tends to just mangle them and they all sort of disintegrate. Unless the board is in a sheltered place, and this is definitely a sheltered place, so that's where the card's going to go. There we are. Now, as well as the parish notice board, this board is also notable for another reason. Underneath, there's a little plaque, and if you can't read this, I'll read it to you. This shelter was erected by the people of Winterborne Whitechurch for the comfort of travellers and to commemorate the coronation of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, June 1953. Now, the bit about travellers, take note of that, because that will be important in the next Dorset run, which you'll see in 2 weeks' time. Our final stop in this village is the Milton Arms on Dorchester Hill. It's a 2-storey public house with later single-storey extensions, suggesting a phased development typical of 19th century roadside inns. Its long presence on Dorchester Hill is significant. This was, after all, a historic route between Blandford Forum and Dorchester, and so this served travellers on the road for many decades before the 21st century. We know the road as the A354 now, and many inns along it date from the 1800s, making it likely that the Milton Arms belongs to this period, even though the exact year of its construction is not recorded anywhere. According to a planning statement submitted in 2022, the pub was closed by Punch Taverns in 2012, ending its operation under that ownership. In April 2015, the property was purchased by new private owners who invested over £150,000 in a full refurbishment. The pub then reopened in September 2015, managed by a member of the owner's family who lived on site. Despite the refurbishment, the business struggled financially and closed again at Easter 2018. Savills were then instructed to market the property for sale or lease. Later in 2018, a couple relocating from Cornwall took on a 15-year lease, reopening the pub before Christmas that year. They upgraded the kitchen and replaced restaurant fittings. However, the pub closed again during the COVID-19 pandemic. After reopening, the tenants were unable to achieve sustainable trade. It finally closed for good in 2021, ending its long period as a licensed premises. So after the old pub, the road goes uphill quite steeply, and at the top of the hill you get to a little path which brings you into this street. This is St Mary's Close, and this is where the old police station is at the bottom of the road. I'll tell you what, now the rain stopped, you can appreciate just how nice Dorset looks when it's clear. Hopefully that's going to hold as we get to our next village. Let's get in the car and head for it. And with that, we're out of the parish of Winterborne Whitechurch. What strikes you here, even in retrospect, is how naturally the village holds together, not through spectacle or grand gestures, but through the steady layering of landscape, history and lived community. The long ribbon of the A354 mirrors the older line of the water carrying the modern life of the village, while never quite overwhelming its older patterns. Houses, some thatched, some brick, some confidently modern, sit in a sequence that feels organic rather than planned. What lingers most, though, is the sense that this one has always adapted without losing itself. Winterborne Whitechurch has absorbed change the way the chalk downs around here absorb the weather, slowly, steadily, and without fuss.
I walked beside the Winterborne in days of chalk and wool, where our pale-walled church stood proud against the timber all around. Now I stride along this broad turnpike, a road I never knew, and see the village stretched in ways my old world never found. Stone towers still stand, though new homes line the way, and fields I once worked roll on beneath the modern day. Winterborne Whitechurch, I know your flowing stream, yet your shape has changed while keeping all you mean. Old earthworks linger, new voices fill the air, and I walk in wonder through a place that still feels fair. St. Mary's greets me still, though fire once took its name. Fairies' work now frames the chancel where my kin once knelt. The reading room hums with life, the hall rings bright and brave, and what comes house stands tall upon the rising Dorset veldt. The past past I recall meets the present I now see. A village grown long yet holding its identity. Winterborne, Whitechurch, I know your flowing stream, yet your shape has changed while keeping all you mean. Old earthworks linger, new voices fill the air, and I walk in wonder through a place that still feels fair. Winterborne, Whitechurch, where old and new entwine, where the chalk downs watch as your pathways realign. Though time has traveled far, your spirit stays the same, and I stand in awe of the village that speaks my name.
Hello folks, welcome back to Dorset for the 5th time this week and the 6th time overall. And today we are in yet another Winterborne. There are lots and lots of Winterborne villages around here, and there's more than what I've shown you this week as well, so this isn't the end of them. Now, this is the end of this first run, however, and I'm starting this one at a green here. Very nice green here. Quite nice, isn't it? The houses around it aren't bad either, but there are a lot of things in this one which are more interesting than that green and those houses. One of them is Duropolis, which is an Iron Age settlement believed to be the oldest in Britain. It's within the parish boundaries here of Winterborne, Kingston. Winterborne, Kingston, King's Land on the Winter River. Finishing up the first batch of 5 during our time in Dorset today, we've made our way to the lovely village of Winterborne, Kingston, and for now at least, this will be the last village we'll see with Winterborne in its name. Winterborne, Kingston refers directly to the Crown. The full name can be understood as King's Land on or by the Winter River. Winterborne, Kingston became an established parish in the medieval period and later formed a chapelry of Beer Regis. Despite that, it retained its own identity, its own church and its own local records. The parish historically included Kingston, Muston and Turberville, the latter of which later became Abbott's Court Farm. Both Kingston and Muston appear in the Domesday Book. They were recorded as agricultural settlements with ploughlands and meadows. The entries show that the area was already productive farmland at the time, with tenants working land held by the king and his dependents. In the medieval period, the manor of Kingston was held by the Crown and later by families such as the Whitewells. Over time, the manor passed through several hands, including the Turberville family, who also held land in Beer Regis. Through it all, farming was the main profession. The centre of life here has always been St Nicholas's Church. Dating from the 14th century, the tower holds 4 bells, 3 cast by John Wallis, each inscribed with short devotional phrases. During the Middle Ages, the village grew around the small roads leading to that very building. From the 16th to the 18th centuries, Winterborne Kingston was known for producing things like barley, dairy products and lime from local kilns. These were all important outputs. Many cottages were single-storey with attics, cob walls and thatched roofs, typical of rural Dorset. By the 17th and 18th centuries, the village had small industries. A malt house operated in the 18th century, producing malt for Dorset and London breweries. Trades such as carpentry, blacksmithing and shoemaking supported village life. In the 1800s, the population reached 567 people. 2 meeting houses were built, a Wesleyan chapel in 1839 and an independent chapel in 1846. By that time, button making had become a common profession amongst women. Now it's much quieter, and it's typical of a Winterborne Valley village. The most notable modern resident is Humphrey Bowen, a chemist and botanist who lived near the village during retirement. He wrote The Flora of Dorset in 2000 whilst living in the area. Let's have a look at his village. Right, before we get to the village itself, our first task is to talk about something called Gyropolis. In the fields to the west of the village, there's quite a lot of ancient remains hiding under the surface of the earth. Gyropolis is the name of an archaeological site at Winterborne Kingston, believed to be the remains of the first planned town in Britain. The site's first discoveries were made in 2008. It was a venture led by co-directors Miles Russell and Paul Cheetham. The 32,000 square metre Iron Age settlement is believed to date to around 100 BCE, making it 70 years older than the Roman town of Silchester. The town was named by archaeologists after the Iron Age Durotrigus tribe. What exactly its purpose was is a little up for debate. Its settlement may have been associated with the abandonment of Maiden Castle in the 1st century BC, but nobody really knows. What is known for sure is that it's a hugely important dig. In 2015, students from Bournemouth University found the remains of 16 Iron Age roundhouses, while geophysical surveys show a total of at least 150 roundhouses and other features in the area. Exactly how big it was might never be known. Excavations continued in 2016 and 2017. In the course of the 2016 excavation, discoveries were made that suggested there were elements of an urban system existing before the Roman invasion. 9 crouched burials thought to date from the Iron Age were discovered during the excavation. A number of animal skeletons discovered at the site suggest that the Iron Age Celtic population may have believed in hybrid animal monster myths akin to those of the Mesopotamians, ancient Greeks and Egyptians. The bone finds, which appear to have been deliberately arranged, included a 2-headed hybrid with a sheep's skull at the front and a bull's at the rear, along with a horse with a cow's horn sticking into its forehead. Weird stuff indeed, and usually the sort of thing reserved only for legends. Access to the site of Gyropolis is limited, but there's one really big clue to its existence. On the dirt track that leads towards it, you'll find the Big Dig Brewhouse. It was founded by 7 enthusiasts who wanted to create a brewery and a tap room where years of archaeological work had taken place beforehand. Brewing officially began in 2023, and the brewhouse launched during the annual Big Dig Open Day, which showcases finds from the Iron Age settlement. The first beer released was Gyropolis Rising, named in collaboration with the archaeologist Dr. Miles Russell. The brewhouse also shares its space with Bean Press Coffee Co., a Dorset coffee roastery that's been based on the farm since 2016. The tap room is described as an agri-chic retro chill-out space. Try saying that one after you've sampled the beer. As well as Gyropolis Rising, they have other beers like Post Hole, Spindle Whirl, Banjo, each named after archaeological features or artefacts found during the Big Dig excavations. The brewery also runs irregular taproom events, often themed around special releases. Okay, so we've done the short drive through the village and we now have a village to walk around. Our first landmark is just up from that green which you saw at the beginning of the video. Here we've got the sports ground, so we're going to walk through that and then on through the village down the main street to the village hall, the War Memorial, the church and all that kind of stuff. Winterborne Kingston has got pretty much everything you'd expect from a normal English village, to be honest. In the village now, we begin at the sports ground in the north. This is used for outdoor recreation and supports outdoor play and informal sport. The hall, located on the same site, is called Winterbornes Kingston Hub. It serves as a practical venue for village activities. In all, this is a really nice space for everyone in the village to enjoy, but there's not a lot more that can be said for it. So then, let's walk on towards the middle of the village where there's plenty more. Our next stop is a pub. The Greyhound Inn is the only pub in Winterbornes Kingston. It's believed to date mainly from the first half of the 19th century, and it stands on North Street. Many rural inns like this were built to serve travellers, farm workers and local trade, and the Greyhound was no exception. The oldest part of the Greyhound Inn is 18th century, specifically the lounge bar. Over the years, the Greyhound has expanded to include a restaurant, a skittle alley and additional bar areas. By the early 21st century, it had become a well-known stop for people exploring the Winterborne Valley. The pub has changed ownership several times. In the late 2000s, it was run by Richard Elkins and his mother Jan, who offered a brilliant food menu and regular themed evenings such as curry nights. More recently, the pub underwent refurbishment and ran under new management. Today, the Greyhound Inn operates as a free house, offering food, drink and accommodation. The pub's facilities, such as the skittle alley, the darts area and the restaurant, remain part of the building's modern layout. Materials-wise, you can see this one is built with cob walls and a tiled roof. Now, we've used that term cob all week, but what actually is it? Well, it's a mixture of earth, straw and water, used widely in the county because it was inexpensive and well suited to the local climate. The tiled roof is also characteristic of the region. Clay tiles became common in Dorset during the post-medieval period, replacing earlier thatch on many buildings. So this combination of cob walls and tile roofing gives the Greyhound a sturdy structure that's lasted for more than 150 years. Got a little bit confused here because our route now follows a footpath that actually runs through the Greyhound's car park. I didn't realise that. So yeah, I've gone through the car park, and as you can see, we are adjacent to the Winterborne stream. Once again, we seem to have seen this in every episode so far. Mind you, it does make sense given the names of the villages we've been visiting. It's crystal clear here as well. You can see right to the bottom. Fantastic. There are two chapels in this village. One of them is an old congregational building, and it would be a little hard to find if you didn't have a map. It's located around the back of the village hall, sort of squirreled away where nobody can really see it. In the 17th and 18th centuries, Dorset had a strong tradition of nonconformist worship, with many small congregations forming outside the Church of England. That explains why a congregational chapel was eventually founded in this village. It was built in 1846. It was later enlarged to the south in 1884 as more space was required. Its building materials follow the Victorian trend of using industrially produced bricks rather than flint or rubble stone, which were common in earlier centuries. To the village hall next on West Street. This is a decent sized communal venue which measures 9.8 metres by 6.3. Those measurements give it a floor area of roughly 61.7 square metres, making it suitable for a lot of purposes. It includes comprehensive kitchen facilities, disabled access, toilets and a sectional stage. It also has on-site parking for 15 to 20 cars, with additional parking available on nearby roads. At the edge of that car park is the War Memorial, which looks like a trig point. It certainly has the same shape. The memorial honours those who died in the First World War, with the main bronze plaque dedicated to the years 1914 to 1918. It also includes a brass plaque for the Falklands conflict of 1982, naming a sailor lost on HMS Sheffield. Officially, this is an obelisk built of Portland stone, which is 1.8 metres tall. The bronze plaque measures 525mm high and 375mm wide. Okay, in front of the village hall we have the parish notice board, and so a card is going on here. Well, that's another Dorset parish in the books and another Winterborne in the books as well. So, excellent. Now we still have a little bit of a walking route to cover here. That didn't want to close very well, I don't know why. Yeah, so yeah, we've got about half the village still to go, and if we go this way, we're heading down towards a couple of religious buildings. We've got a chapel and we've got the church to see. Okay, let's have a look at the Methodist Chapel now. This was founded in 1878, a date confirmed by the date stone, which is still visible on the building today. It was built originally as a Wesleyan Methodist chapel and served local Methodists for more than a century before its closure in the 1990s. After closure, it was converted into a private home. The use of brick here, rather than cob or thatch, marks the chapel as a product of the industrial era, when mass-produced materials became more accessible. It's a simple rectangular building typical of Wesleyan design, with a single main hall. The chapel's windows are arched Victorian openings fitted with clear or lightly frosted glass. Because the Methodist chapel was a nonconformist building, it did not have a burial ground of its own, and any memorials inside would have been modest wooden or brass plaques. The life and soul of this village has always been St Nicholas's Church, and so it remains today. Although the current church is not mentioned in the Domesday Book, Christian worship has taken place on or near the present site for more than 800 years. This dates mainly from the 13th century, with later additions. The earliest surviving parts are from the 1200s, including sections of the nave walls. The tower was added in the 15th century. The dedication to St Nicholas was common in medieval Dorset, by the way. The entire church was restored in 1868, a Victorian rebuilding recorded in the diocesan archives and noted by Historic England. What you see here now is mainly built of rubble stone with ashlar dressings. Cut stone is used for corners and for window frames. The church has a nave, a chancel, a south porch, and that west tower, which is made of limestone. Inside the church, one of the oldest features is the 13th century font carved from Purbeck marble. The pulpit is 17th century, made of wood with simple panelling. The pews are mostly Victorian, installed during the 1868 restoration. There are 4 bells, all cast by John Wallis of Salisbury in 1594. That makes them more than 430 years old, and they are among the oldest surviving features in the building today. There are also several memorials to local families, both inside and outside the church. The churchyard includes tombs of the Arnold family, located about 20 paces south of the tower. Inside are memorials to members of the Bullen and Clavel families. Unusually, the churchyard here continues to be used for burials, and so if you look around, you will spot several 20th century headstones. The church also remains open for services. Its long history makes it the most significant historic building in Winterborne, Kingston. Now, yesterday we learned a bit about Dunbury Church of England Academy, and we visited one of its two sites in Winterborne Whitechurch. Kingston has the other site, and that's next on our list. You'll recall this site is for the Key Stage 1 pupils. One thing we didn't establish yesterday is how the name Dunbury came into being. Shouldn't this be Winterborne Academy or something like that? Well, the school's name comes from the old name Dunbury Vale, which appears in 19th century Ordnance Survey records. Dunbury Academy replaced three former village schools: Winterborne Kingston Primary School, Winterborne Stickland Primary School and Milton OMNIBUS Primary School. The old school building here, which had served the village for more than a century, closed at the same time. The girl on the horse you saw there just apologised to me and said, sorry, we like to ruin things. You might have heard her say that. Didn't ruin it at all. I quite like seeing horses. Anyway, we are pretty much done with the walk here, because from this point onwards it's all housing. You've heard that a few times, haven't you? So we're going to make our way back to where we started, close to the sports ground. I'll get a few more cursory shots of some of the properties in Winterborne Kingston, and then we'll drive out to the east, because there's one more thing left to cover. It's called Abbots Court Farm. Now we're over to the east of the village, where we find Abbots Court Farm. The name Abbots Court is linked to the medieval land holdings of Kern Abbey, which owned estates across Dorset. The land around Winterborne Kingston formed part of those holdings. The name Court suggests a manor or a farmstead connected to the abbey's administration. By the late 1800s, Abbots Court had become a working agricultural estate, appearing on Ordnance Survey maps from 1888 as a named property with associated farmland. During the Second World War, parts of the farmland were used for increased food production under the War Agricultural Executive Committee, and that helped establish Abbots Court as a site with a clear role in the local food supply chain. Abbots Court Farm developed into a significant dairy during the mid-20th century. Agricultural census data from 1950 to 1980 shows that farms in the Winterborne Kingston area expanded their dairy herds and invested in new milking technology. That explains why the farm buildings visible today include steel frame barns, silage clamps, and cattle housing. The farm continues to operate as a commercial agricultural business, contributing to Dorset's dairy sector, which produces more than 300 million litres of milk per year. It uses modern milking systems, including automated parlour equipment, which became standard on Dorset farms after 1990. Dorset Council's agricultural planning documents note that dairy farms in the Winterborne Valley typically manage herds of between 150 and 300 cows, and Abbots Court Dairy still fits within that scale. However, like many farms, Abbots Court has now diversified somewhat. The Victorian house at the centre of it all has always had large rooms and grounds, and that means it was well suited to guest accommodation, laying the foundations for the modern Abbots Court Rural Retreat and Wedding Venue. Abbots Court Rural Retreat opened as a hospitality venue in the 2010s. Listings describe it as a boutique country house offering stays in a rural setting. The retreat provides guest rooms, dining spaces, and access to the surrounding grounds. The wedding venue was established as part of the retreat's expansion. The venue now includes outdoor ceremony areas, a marquee or teepee space, and access to the house for accommodation after the event. The venue can host up to 150 guests in all. And we come to the end of another Winterborne here in Dorset. One thing I wasn't able to include in the main walk here is the fact that the village sits on the line of a Roman road, Icknield Street, which splits the place into two parts. The line of the road still marks the ground nearby, reminding visitors that this valley has been part of wider routes for well over a millennium. It's a bit like that with the seasonal stream that we've been following all week. It always amazes me how these ancient features still define what we know now. Here, agriculture still defines it all too, even though Abbots Court Farm does a lot more than just produce milk these days. All the elements of Winterborne Kingston give it a strong sense of place as it continues to welcome these new ideas, new families, and new uses for its landscape.
With the herd in the first pale light, steel barns humming as the day turns bright, old Abbots Court watching over my stride, where the fields roll out on the Roman divide. Duropolis fields lie still out west, roundhouse shadows where the soil feels blessed, milk lines running with a steady flow, in a village shaped by all we know. And I breathe in the work, the land, the air, every footstep says I belong out there. Winterborne Kingston, I stand in your view, with the herd, with the hills, with the old and the new, where the church tower marks every season's call, and the greyhound glows when the night starts to fall. Winterborne Kingston, you carry me through, in the churn of the farm I'm steady and true. Schoolyard voices drift across the breeze, children's laughter through the old oak trees, brick chapels resting by the hall's broadside, Houghton stone watching as the years glide, big dig tails on the track out west, hybrid beasts laid down in their rest, and here on the dare the rhythm stays strong, with the herd moving steady as the day moves along. And in the fields keep their shape, their pull, their sway, guiding every choice I make each day. Winterborne, Kingston, I stand in your view, with the herd, with the hills, with the old and the new, where the church tower marks every season's call, and the greyhound glows when the night starts to fall. Winterborne, Kingston, you carry me through. In the churn of the farm, I'm steady and true. Winterborne, Kingston, Winterborne, Kingston, I stand in your view, with the herd, with the hills, with the old and the new. Winterborne, Kingston, you carry me through. In the churn of the farm, I'm steady and true. Yeah.
Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.